Hello, and welcome to another episode of 207 Aikido. Things are really hectic right now, trying to wrap up all of my loose ends before my next trip, but I wanted to get at least one more video up for my trip to the Aikido Summer School in Galway with Henry Kono. The first thing I noticed when I started practicing with this group is the softness that they've all developed. If you want to do techniques Henry's way, you really have to cultivate this softness. And when you're learning the techniques, it's really important that uke has this softness as well. Now, this is not to say that the techniques are only effective on a really soft uke. It's just, if uke isn't soft, they're going to be much, much harder to learn. So I knew that when I returned home, one of the first things I wanted to get our group doing was to develop as much of this softness as possible. With that in mind, I want to present a few moments from Tyler Crandall's class on Thursday afternoon. Tyler's class was focused on being uke. He was basically talking about how to throw yourself. This is exactly the kind of thing that I would have snickered at when I began in Tomiki Aikido 10 years back. But I've come to realize how much value there is in this type of exercise. Now, I want to make clear that I'm not talking about perfecting make-believe techniques. This is an unorthodox, but I believe effective way to become looser as uke. It's not about arbitrarily jumping into some big, pretty fall. This is about being loose enough to move quickly and smoothly to where the center is telling you to move. This is one way, and not the only way, but one way to stay safe as uke. If you're loose enough to move to that center and maintain the length of your own arms, your opponent can never really enter into your bubble and harm you. It's also much safer to take falls when you're loose, for the same reason that it's always the drunk driver that walks away from an accident. So as uke, we want to be that drunk driver, to a certain extent. So, without any further ado, here's Tyler.
So, I just want us to get, when we go into our training here in a minute, we're just going to deal with what we touch. You're going to come up to the surface, and as uke, I'm going to put it very simply in words. I'm just learning the length of my own arm. Just let it come all the way out. And I'm just trying to keep myself this long. Whatever I'm touching is the edge of it, and I'm moving my feet to keep the pressure that he was talking about this morning. Henry was talking about us keeping the pressure. It's not just the person who's throwing. You're reaching out to this edge, and it's like an eggshell. You're not going to go jamming in there. You stop right at the edge, and you're going to stay there. The way you're going to stay there is you're going to actively continue to move your feet so that you stay at that edge. Your whole body may have to go down in order to stay at that edge. And that's the activity we're doing. We're not doing attack and defend. That is legitimate. That is two circles. That is one needs to defeat the other. But this exercise that we're doing, the reason we just get these exercises, from my perspective, is that it's hard enough just to learn this edge. Don't waste half your practice. You've got to stay there when you're doing uke too. And we're going to try and learn how to stay right at this edge so that not only do we know it, but we're able to explain it to other people. So we're going to do this exercise that Henry's had us do. This is, how we teach newer people. Kat's done this before, but, I'm just going to put my hand out like this. And I want Kat to learn the length of her own arm, and I want her to learn how to make a pressure here, or just how to take the ikemi and push in, and then take the energy back out and start to move down, right? And then as you push in here, in order to stay connected, open your body up. The shoulder's going to move away. You're going to drop. And keep the pressure all the way down to the end. And it's not that I'm doing much. I'm just trying to learn how to stay here for her so that she has a pressure to deal with. And your job is to keep moving, to open your body, and keep pushing. And as you push in, the energy comes back out. And you come down. Get your body out of the way, all the way to the ground. And problems that people have usually I hear, how, why would I have to move anything? You're not moving. It's because she has an intention to make a pressure here. 1 ounce or 2 ounces of tenderness talking this way. You start to make that pressure, and then now you're crushing it, right? You go past that pressure. So right when you start to hit that, you've got to become active and start to move. And this has to stay the same all the way to the bottom. And she's got to start to learn. And then the pointer Henry gave us this morning, if we can switch roles, is that we turn the body and the feet stop, right? He said the feet immediately have to start going. And if you're kind of touching here and it's getting really slow, it's because you're being very unresponsive to your own body. It should be just the second I touch it, I can start to go all the way through. And the lighter I get it, the faster I can get through. Because the energy that I touch out into my own fingertips comes right back. And I move my feet to keep the pressure the same. Because I have to move. I have to move somewhere. There's only a certain place where I can be, where I'm at this arm's length, be in motion, and still be touching here at the same pressure. That's what you're trying to do. There's like a couple of things happening. When we learn to just stay here, your body is sorted out. It's not calculated. I'm here at the edge, I'm touching this, and I'll go down. Now, one thing I saw is that someone come already smaller. But if you're at the edge, it's not going to get smaller. Right? Second you touch, your feet should be moving. So let's just try this for another minute, and then we're going to evolve it. But find a new partner and think about these little pointers. Touch this. What is the length of my own arm? That's your question. Touch, pressure, your feet. Because everything in Kemi is about me learning where I have to stand to keep this length, keep the pressure, and keep it motion. He's trying to repeat it to me, he's hammering my I'm not, something to say to people who have been really entrenched in 2 circles is, I'm not going to let this into my body. Because 2 circles is elbow, shoulder, top of, all this kind of stuff. But why can they do that? They can only do that because I let them pass this point. I stop here. My attention's now on my elbow, and they go to my elbow. My attention's in my shoulder, and they go to my shoulder. I allow my attention to go all over the place. And that's why they can even sense these other body parts. But if I stay here and anything's ramming in, I don't want to even know what the inside of my body feels like. Have any of us who've been thrown by Henry ever felt anything to dig into? That's what I'm trying to get to. I don't want people to have the sensation they can dig into my body. It frustrates the heck out of some people in practicing who don't know where I'm coming from. And I have to apologize. Sometimes I have to say, okay, I'll do what you're doing. And then there are other times where I have to say, I'm going to get hurt if I do that. And I have to take their choice away from it and say, I have to move ahead so that I don't get creamed. And as I go right to this point, if anything was crashing into me, I have to, what's going to happen? I'm throwing him. And he goes through each of the team. If I wait, I'm going to get hammered. If I'm right out of the edge, maybe all the jump on it because I'm not going to the edge. These 2 things are the same. So now we want to go to the other side. And that just means, okay, I made a contact point here. I can get my other hand out because the center. So I start to move. He's not going to move. I'm just going to learn. How long is this arm? Right? And if I come and I collapse this, I've lost that point in this exercise. This exercise is, I have a certain length. And at the end it's lower so I can roll that length. Maybe some of you aren't comfortable with rolling it. Just learn how far I have to move away. Keep that pressure and still be a nice arm's length. So if being answered at the same time. That's why I can't just give it to someone in a second and go, this is what you do. We all have to kind of one-on-one talk to someone and go and stay right to that point. And the partner, we'll do this one a little bit. Because you can make it raise your sharp edge right here at the front. That tells me I need to stay there too. Right? But if I'm going to come through and I compress myself, make my edge, make my body small. Yes, you can still be at the edge, you can come in, and you're still your 50%, but now I have to get my body through. I'm coming through and I can't go backwards. I'm going to have to learn how to drop myself. Keep this up there. Well, when I come down that far, you may have to lower yourself to stay at the edge too, because at a certain point I fall back to the point where I can only reach this far. So if I go under, knees tuck in, my head has to tuck up, that's part of being out, right? I'm back like this, I can't be here, but I have to stay here, right? So, yeah. So, if it's too difficult, maybe you'll just learn how to go on one hand, knees tuck in, head comes up, and I have to stay here as I go back. Okay. And so you can do one or two hands if you like. And I just want you to practice as you come forward to keep the space, to lower yourself. Right? Because this is me just letting it in. Right? So the only way is for you to go down and through. And when she's not making the space, I have to make it for her. This is where you're not. She starts going back. Attention on me, sorry. She starts going back. She can make more space for me. It's much easier to do this. But if she gets stuck somewhere, I have to be able to do that dip. I have to be able to make room to finish this technique because that's my practice. It's not to teach her or to do anything to her. It's for me to keep this distance. And if that makes the technique happen, so be it. Our role isn't to stop each other from doing this. We want to be successful. The way that we're successful is we keep our space and we move through. So, get a partner. We're going to experiment with that. I'll come around and ask you questions.
When I explained this exercise to the folks back at home and its relationship to normal practice and what you might call street application, I talked about the varying degrees of responsibility for maintaining the pressure at the center. In these drills, it's 95% Uke's job. Tori's only job is to just provide a stable surface and maybe to drop it as Uke falls. Other than that, it's entirely Uke's job to maintain that pressure. In the sort of regular practice with Henry, I think the responsibility is much more evenly shared. I've said 50-50, but I think it's more like both people are responsible to take up whatever slack there is as soon as anything starts to waver. Now on the street, of course, it's a totally different ballgame. Tori is going to be 100% responsible for maintaining that level of pressure. Right? Once Uke makes his attack, whatever that attack is, he's not going to make it any easier. He's not going to do anything to make it easier for Tori. So it's 100% Tori's job to maintain that level of pressure where he wants it. But here's the thing. The feeling at the center should be exactly the same in all three cases. The case where Uke is throwing himself, the case where you've got your sort of normal seminar practice with Henry, and then an actual attack on the street. At the center, the feeling should be the same. Now, obviously, on the street, you're going to be moving your feet. You might be dipping. You could be doing any number of things to vary your position and placement. But at the center, the feeling should be exactly the same. So, in a way, even in the drill where Uke is throwing himself, the practice is useful for Tori because it begins to let your body get used to what that feeling at the center is going to be. You're going to have to move your feet, but now you know the feeling at the center. So it's a little bit weird, but I really encourage you to give these drills a shot. and let me know what you think.